Hey, Bob Perdue here with Life Now Ministries and sharing another devotion tonight. Just going to wait a few minutes. Hi, Julie and Todd Fogel. It's been a long time. Cheryl Annie Smith, good to see you. Lindsay's here. Oh, look, my wife is watching. Isn't that supportive? All right, so Kemba and Janet Lemos, wonderful. Glad to see you guys. I know a lot of people are doing devotions online right now, and so you got a lot of people that you could be watching. So I appreciate your support in watching these devotions on Tuesday night. I don't know about you, but I am getting just about done with this quarantine thing. I was telling my wife at dinner tonight that I've kind of hit the wall. I usually work 3 jobs and I'm on the go, running from one to the other all the time. This is the longest I have sat still in a very long time. So it's really starting to get to me. So good to see some of you guys. Carolyn Shope, Susan Price. Hey, James Blevins. Good to see you. Genoa and Russ. It's been a long time since I've seen you guys as well. All right, well, this is Bob Perdue, Life Now Ministries, sharing just a short devotion here tonight. And as I was saying, I feel like we're all kind of getting to the point where this quarantine should be over, that we've had just about enough of staying at home. And you know what happens when we are kind of left to ourselves for a long period of time? I think that our flesh patterns that we particularly struggle with, they start to rise up. And you're probably noticing that some of the things that you struggle with as far as your behaviors are concerned may be getting worse because you have so much alone time. One of the things I think that's happening, and this could be happening to you, maybe not, but at least consider it, is that because our world has kind of shrunk over the last 6 weeks, we're kind of in a tighter group, we're not interacting with a lot of other people, is that we can develop a real self-focus, where we're really thinking so much about ourselves all the time. And this can be a problem for us. You know, one of the evidences is we're so self-focused and so fearful about getting this virus that if you sneeze or cough or anything like that, you all of a sudden are thinking you must have it because we're just so self-focused. Now, self-focus is not a new problem. In fact, it started in the Garden of Eden long ago. Adam and Eve, of course, were created, and there was no sin, and they were naked and unashamed because they had this great balance between positive self-esteem and acceptance of each other and concern for the other person. But the Bible tells us that when sin entered, they became self-conscious. They began to focus on themselves, and they became concerned about how they looked and a little bit embarrassed. And so immediately after they sinned, they hid behind the fig leaves. Because of that self-focus, that self-consciousness, that definitely interfered with their relationship. And if we're struggling with self-focus during this time of quarantine, it's definitely going to interfere with our relationships as well. It's a problem that's rooted in our flesh. But of course, if we have the Spirit of God living inside of us, we don't have to choose to live out of our flesh. We can choose to live out of the Spirit. So what I want to do tonight is just show you 3 verses, just kind of walk you through these verses and let you see some truth from Scripture about this idea of self-focus. And in order to turn there we go, so that you can see my screen. So here's our first verse, and this verse is going to show us kind of a shift from self-focus. This is from the Apostle Paul. And he says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interests of others." Now, he starts out by saying, don't do anything out of selfish ambition. And the word that's used here literally is the word putting yourself forward. It's actually a political term for partisanship. Where you can imagine a politician kind of steps out And the only opinion that matters is his opinion because he's putting himself in front of other people. And that's kind of the idea here. And then the second word that Paul uses to describe this self-focus is vain conceit. And this particular word means groundless self-esteem. Now, I'm not talking about the fact that we shouldn't have some self-esteem, but what this is over-exaggerated. Basically, it's when we begin to value ourselves more than we value other people. And of course, that's really the definition of self-esteem. Of self-focus. So where's the shift? Look at this word, rather. Instead of this selfish ambition or vain conceit, instead of focusing on yourselves, the first thing we have to do is check our attitude, humility. We could put the word modesty in there. Not that we hate ourselves, but that we put ourselves in their proper place and we learn to value others above ourselves. Now, sometimes we have at our house, we have a yard sale, and we'll put all the stuff out in the garage, and then we will price everything. When we're pricing everything, we're trying to determine what something's worth. This idea of valuing others, basically what we're talking about is you're putting a higher price tag on them than you are yourself. And so in the scheme of things, in your thought patterns, you're realizing, hey, other people are valuable too. It's not all about me. Now you might say, well, I don't think I struggle with that. What would be? Well, let's look at this picture. So at the beginning of this coronavirus, people were running to the stores and filling up their grocery carts with toilet paper. I'm not really sure what that phenomenon was all about. But for instance, in this particular picture, she's got 7 packages, and there are 16 rolls in each package, which means she has 112 rolls of toilet paper. Now, let's say they're 2-ply toilet paper, so they're 500 sheets per roll. That means she has 56,000 sheets of toilet paper. Now, let's just assume that you use 20 sheets every time you go potty. That's 2,800 times going to the bathroom. Now, that's a lot of toilet paper. And I don't think anybody could actually use that much toilet paper, even in the time period that we've been quarantined. And so what happened is, and we all realized it, some people went and bought it all, and then the rest of the people had what? Nothing. Now, the people who bought this much toilet paper, let me ask you a question. Who were they thinking about? They certainly were not thinking about other people, were they? They were definitely thinking only about themselves. And so sometimes these kinds of crises do cause us to forget to value other people above ourselves. All right, let's look at the second verse, Ephesians chapter 4, because self-focus definitely affects our speech. This one says, do not let any unwholesome talk. That would be talk that is worthless, unfit, or not beneficial. Not necessarily not true, just not beneficial. Let no unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but here's the shift. Only what is helpful for building up others, that it may benefit those who listen. So the idea here is that our speech is supposed to be something that actually delivers grace to other people. That what we say and what we talk about is going to be something that's filled with grace toward other people. And not just grace, but also it says building other people up. So let's think about the stuff weeks, the things that you've been saying over and over again. Are those things that are promoting another person's growth? Or are they things that would be considered unwholesome talk? Now, just to help you with that, let me show you this picture. Is that you may have made some unwholesome talk about over the last 6 weeks. Now, I'm going to agree with you that it's very frustrating because the people in this picture often are saying different things and giving different reports, and we're having a hard time figuring out what's really going on. They're disagreeing with each other. But here's the thing, a lot of people are just over and over again. I think that qualifies as unwholesome talk. I think I think that it tears us down, it causes us to feel negative, and it certainly doesn't build anybody else up. Now, if you're talking to somebody and trying to share your opinion about something, that's perfectly fine. But the problem is that we go on and on and on, don't we? Well, maybe you say, well, I agree with most of these people. Well, if you do, then you probably don't agree with the people in this photo. This is the governor of our great state of Virginia. And you may find in this photo somebody that you disagree with. The thing is that if we are constantly being negative and talking negative about our leadership, that qualifies as unwholesome talk. It definitely is not delivering grace, and it's definitely not building anybody up. We really need to be praying for our leaders. I wouldn't want to have to be in charge and trying to make decisions in this pandemic. What an overwhelming task it is. So they all need our prayers much more than they need our criticism. But when we're self-focused, when we're only thinking about what we want and what we need, then it's very easy for unwholesome talk to fill our lips and come out. All right, the last verse I want to show you is not really one that has a shift in it, just kind of a conclusion. For where you have envy and selfish ambition. Envy, of course, is always self-focused, jealousy, comparing with the same one we saw in Philippians chapter 2, putting ourselves forward, partisanship. So when we all start to get self-focused, what happens? There you find disorder, which is chaos, confusion, instability, and every evil practice. What happens? We start making really poor choices. Now, I think we're starting to see this, aren't we? I think the fact that people are focused on what they believe, considering what might be good for others, is leading to things like this, where people are getting up in arms. And instead of cooperating, people are protesting, people are angry, people are fighting. That kind of disorder and chaos is not something that God wants us to be involved in. Peace, He wants us to live in peace, as much as possible, He says, with all men. But when we get so focused on ourselves and on our own opinions and on what we think is right, it's very difficult for us not to fall into this kind of practice. Remedy here, well, obviously we have to make a flesh, but to live out of the Spirit. To say no to our flesh, that's what Jesus said. If you want to follow me, you got to deny your flesh, take up your cross and follow me. And then begin to shift your focus from yourself to other people. Now, lots of people have been doing that, haven't they, over this time? You have people who are making masks for others, people who are providing groceries for others, people who are encouraging people on the front lines, people who are saying, I want to be part of the solution, and reaching out to people who might be in need. I think there's so many things at this point that we could be doing that would be beneficial and helping others. And it would get our focus off of ourselves and get our focus on to what us do. So I want to challenge you. If you think you've fallen into this kind of routine of criticizing, of thinking about your own needs, of being particularly self-focused, I want to challenge you to begin to think more outside of yourself and to say, you know what? There are people out there who are hurting. There are needs out there that I need to be helping to reach. One of the things that I've been doing is I have several things that I'm passionate about. And one of them is I'm part of an orphanage in Cameroon, West Africa, called the Manjo Children's Home. And this past week, I was kind of tasked with sending out a newsletter and updating their website. This children's home was started by a lady who came to the States, started attending the church I was pastoring, came to know the Lord, and then she got a real burden for the orphans in her home country of Cameroon. And through miraculous events, God provided property. Now there are 3 houses built as well as another building. There are 16 children living on site. We just got another child this past month, parents were just both killed in the civil war in Cameroon, and she now has a home where she's going to be loved and where she's going to learn about God. So it helps me to stop thinking about the coronavirus to sit in this house, and it helps me to think about those orphans and to pray for them, and to, just like I'm doing now, do some shameless promotion of Manjo Children's Home so that other people can help people who need help even more than we do. So just reminding you that it's possible that as our world has shrunk over the last few weeks, that we've become a little too self-focused, and we need to check our flesh and yield to the Spirit and begin to think outside of ourselves. So I hope this helps. I hope maybe in the next week you'll reach out to somebody in need, and you'll start to see how good it feels to think about others more than thinking about yourselves. Thanks so much for watching. God bless you, and have a great week.